Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are returning, I appreciate you coming back and watching another video. And if you are new, hopefully you stick around and check out my other videos. Maybe you'll subscribe and like a video here and there. Maybe even comment or hit the notification bell. All of that really helps. I know you get tired of hearing it from every YouTuber, but when you're trying to, develop your community or even sustain your community, all those things help. So I know you're tired of hearing it, but unfortunately, we all kind of have to do it. Regardless, today I don't really have a particular subject I wanted to talk about, except for basically like a story time thing, but more like a rant, I guess. And I know people don't necessarily like rants, but sometimes people kind of get into it, depending on the subject. And today I wanted to talk about my own personal subject, and obviously this is unscripted. This is all just kind of seeing what happens with it. But really, uh, my PlayStation story, basically. So real quick, I'm just kind of going to go over the beginning part, which is not too interesting. But what happens later becomes way more interesting. So, growing up, I was born in the early 90s, grew up obviously in the late 90s and the early 2000s. And I do remember the PlayStation 1, but only vaguely. And there's only a handful of games from it that I actually remember playing. Even though I remember a few games from it, quite a few actually. Not too many that I remember playing on a regular basis. But when the PlayStation 2 came out, we ended up getting it, of course, and I absolutely loved it, and it was a great system, and I never understood why anybody would want to get the GameCube or Xbox. Fast forward to the time of release when it comes to the 360 and PS3, and at this point, I had already gotten an Xbox through basically like a charity thing for poor people. But somebody named DJ, which I don't know who you are, but if you ever watch this, I appreciate it, gave his Xbox, his original Xbox, a bunch of controllers and a bunch of games, and the ones he gave was Halo. And after that, I became a really big Xbox fanboy, and since the 360 was a lot cheaper than the PS3, I knew that I would have a higher chance of convincing, my parents to get a 360 before we ever got a PS3. And that was true. I ended up getting a 360 not too long after it came out, and well, actually, it was a while after it came out because it's about 2 years. Then I got a 360. But regardless of that, I became a huge Halo fan, and I played all of them since. And because of that, I basically stuck with Xbox because PlayStation at this point had already burned me with the price tag of the PS3 being just so insanely high for 2006. Like, that was insane. Like, nobody in their right mind would pay that kind of money for a console. Unless they're just super rich. But if you're that rich, just get a gaming PC. It just doesn't make any sense. So we were like, yeah, that's impossible. We're not going to get that. And I never played a PS3 until like 2014, maybe, because I got with my current fiance and she had one, and I was surprised she had a PS3 to be honest, but she had one and I thought it was cool. But like the first time I ever played it, I thought it was pretty interesting. I liked the way it was done. I just never played one. Um, but I didn't hate PlayStation yet. Well, I don't really hate them now, but I'm heavily disappointed in them. That's for sure. Um, so now we get to the newer systems like the PS4 and the PS5. The PS4 again was one of those things where I was already an Xbox fan. And unlike a lot of other people who were super upset about what they were, talking about with the Xbox One's like original like launch, like what they were going to do. Which don't get me wrong, I totally understand why people were upset about it, but I didn't care because I wanted to play the next Halo title. And at this point, I wasn't um, jaded yet. I think like the Xbox One had only been announced a little bit before Halo 4 came out, I think. But Halo 4 was announced before that. But I remember getting it on the 360 back in the day, and I hated it. And I still do. Halo 4 is probably the worst game in the series. I know a lot of people disagree with that. I think 5 is. And while 5 is really bad when it comes to the campaign, I just think that, it's overall a better game, gameplay wise. But with 4 and 5 and Master Chief Collection, they really burned me pretty bad. So, I wasn't as super enthusiastic about Halo anymore. I didn't really care that much. And I was like, it's been a long time since I owned a, current gen PlayStation. And this was like, 2019 or 2018 or something. And I figured, you know what? I'm going to get a PS4. So I did. Little did I know that I basically got it right after Sony had announced that they were basically going to start to censor things. And one of the main reasons why I got a PS4 is because, I've become obviously a big weeb, a big fan of anime. And anime comes from Japan, which means that more than likely they're going to put their anime-based games or anime-style games on a console that, is more popular in Japan, like PlayStation or Nintendo. And again, I don't have Nintendo consoles. I'm not a Nintendo fan. So, I went to PlayStation. And it's funny, I got it right when they basically announced that they were doing all this. I got it when they announced that they were going to do all this kind of stuff to their games. And it really sucked because one of the main reasons why I wanted to get these like anime style games was because they were, more raunchy, and at least when it comes to like sexual content, because it's just more interesting to me. Like I've seen tons of gory content in video games for a long time. So that's no longer as shocking to me. It's not as interesting anymore. But that's the reason why something is rated M. But something that's rated M for more sexual content, well, that's a little bit more intriguing. So why don't I go and check these out? And I was like, I'm going to get a PlayStation because it's cheaper than getting a PC. And, I'm not really a Nintendo fan, so I'll just skip on getting that for myself. And now I'm kind of like kicking myself because it's like as soon as I got the PS4 is when they decided to do this. And then the PS5 has come out and it's just as bad. They're doing it there too. And then basically also around the same time, as soon as I do this, because of a lot of these censorship policies and like stuff like that, a lot of Japanese companies have gone to doing games on Xbox more often than they used to. So now the Xbox One and the Series X has tons more content for like Japanese players or just, weebs who like Japanese content and want to play Japanese style games. They have more, they have a lot more to choose from now than they used to. And a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the times they are uncensored. But then I find out that even sometimes, even they're a little bit censored. Not always, but sometimes they are. And then I find out that Nintendo, has been basically the uncensored king lately of all consoles. Like, what is happening? The whole reason why PlayStation got popular back in the 90s was that they were trying to be the hip, cool, extreme console. well, they were trying to be the hip and cool console for adults, while Xbox was trying to be the extreme radical dude type of console for like teenagers and young adults. So it's just like the two consoles that are meant to be for more older audiences have now started to go back on that and have started to censor games like games used to be censored back in the 90s. While Nintendo, the company most infamous for doing this kind of stuff, is allowing just all kinds of things. Like there's this game called Hentai versus Evil that I'm actually interested in that has a mode that has been censored from the PlayStation version that's not censored on the Switch version, where you can actually run around completely topless, exposing full, top female nudity, which is something that you just don't see like that in video games. You don't see that. And being more interested in Japanese culture and stuff anyways, and always being interested in Japanese entertainment, where in anime that kind of stuff is a little bit more common, especially in older anime. Like, it's just, you see it a lot more. So seeing, like, being more interested in it because of a medium that I'm already interested in, going to a console where I thought I would be able to experience more, and I'm technically right, I would be able to experience more of this type of content. A lot of it is being censored now when I decide to jump over to PlayStation. It's just like, really? Um, like, obviously, I'm obviously going to go for Xbox first. I'll always go for Xbox. But afterwards, the next new console I'd get for myself would probably be a freaking Nintendo of all systems. Because they're more likely to uncensored Japanese games. And the funny thing is that Sony's a Japanese company, but I believe from what I found, they've moved their headquarters to California. So technically now they're an American company, which explains why they're screwing all this stuff up. Like, why mess with this? I know it's because, the Puritans of California, the leftists, are taking over and are basically destroying everything. And they're trying to destroy Sony and PlayStation. Why does Sony even move to California? That makes no sense. Like, you're a Japanese company. What do you care about what Americans think or want from your games? They're not really meant for us. They're meant for Japanese audiences. So just focus on them. Because at the very least, if we're super interested in these games, we can at least import them. And most consoles, or all the newer systems, as far as I know, are region free. So you can get a Japanese copy of a game and play it on an American PlayStation 4, and it will work just fine, unlike the old days where you'd have to modify stuff. Like, or get a Japanese PlayStation 1 or 2 or something. Like, I don't really understand it. I know this is kind of silly and just off topic, but like, it's still anime related to an extent, but like, if I wanted to play a lot of anime based games, or games that have that anime aesthetic but aren't based on anime, I'd have to go to Nintendo or PC. Because while Xbox has a lot more options than it did before, they're still not like fully accepting of it, mostly because of the demographic that is popular with Xbox, which is pretty much mostly Americans. Um, and shooter fans because of Halo. So if I want to get that, I have to get Nintendo or a PC or something that can play these types of games, because I can't go to the one place I thought I could, which was PlayStation. Because they'll just censor it, and I don't want it to be censored. And this is less due to the fact of being horny or anything for um, anime girls. Okay, like, yeah, obviously I like anime girls. I find them attractive, of course. A lot of anime fans do. Don't let them tell you otherwise. But that's not the main reason. The main reason that I don't want any kind of like censorship like that is because it's censorship. It destroys the original vision of the developers and the publishers. And when they have to go back and edit work that they spent so much time doing, it's kind of pointless. this. Like, if the animators and the modelers and the writers and all that stuff come up with this crazy scene, and a girl is supposed to be completely naked in the scene, even if nothing sexual is going on, she's just naked. They would have to go back on Sony's system and cover that up with something, and that's just extra work for them to cover up what they originally did. It's like, what's the point? Like, they spent so much time doing this, they might as well have just not have done that. And what if that entire scene was important to the story or character development? We won't know because it won't make sense, because in the PlayStation version she's covered up, or in the American version she's completely covered up. And at this point, even the Japanese versions are being censored. Like, it's just, it makes no sense to me. And I'm so frustrated with it, because it's just like, of all places, I wouldn't think that PlayStation would do this, because they prided themselves on being the system for, older audiences. And now the adult, older content that older audiences would want is being censored. But the console that's meant for kids, the Nintendo systems, are just letting everything go through. Like, what? It's just mind blowing to me how the dynamic has changed. Because I remember from a time where it really wasn't like this. Xbox or PlayStation were the ones that were the most like uncensored versions or whatever. Sure, sometimes their versions would be censored, but usually only in like America or something. Like the Japanese version would be like completely uncensored when it comes to sexual content. But that's another thing. I don't understand why the Zero system in Japan has been so hardcore on blood and violence. It just makes no sense to me. It's like, why? You have some of the most goriest cartoons or animations ever made. You have some of the most gory horror films I have ever seen. But video games? Oh, that can't be bloody. Yeah, that Gears of War, yeah, we have to have it to where sparks are flying out. There can be no gore. What? So you're telling me I can watch a character get ripped in half in an anime with no censorship and it's totally fine? At least when it comes to the home media version. But I can't watch the same kind of thing in a video game, especially if it's based off of that anime. Like, what the hell, man? Like, it bothers me. Like, I was going to do a different video, a completely different video. I have a different setup going on right now. I was going to do, like, a reaction or something. But I just kind of wanted to do this because I know no one's really going to see it and no one's really going to care. But, like, it was so frustrating learning that. Like, oh, you went to PlayStation to get an experience that you've always kind of wanted since you've become an anime fan, but never really could have because of being an Xbox fan. And now that you've got a PlayStation 4, now Xbox is getting more anime stuff or anime-related video games or styled games. And the PlayStation you got specifically to get these games are now being censored. So now it's like, do I even want to keep my PlayStation? I don't know, man. It's just so frustrating. Like, I'm probably never going to get a 5, at least not for myself, because fuck it. I'd rather get an Xbox. But that's just me. A lot of other people would be like, no, PlayStation 5's the best, and I understand that people really like PlayStation. But this right here has really turned me off to them, because, it's like, one, your system is basically the same as an Xbox. Like, let's not get it twisted here. Even if it's more powerful, which it may be, it may not be. I'm not the biggest tech expert in the world. But even if it's more powerful, right? Like, who even really gives a shit? Because at the end of the day, we've gotten to a point where our video games and consoles are so powerful that you have to, like, zoom in and, like, see the detail on this scratch on this car's paint job is so much more detailed because it's less hazy than the other one. It's like, seriously? that's the point we've gotten to when it comes to comparing systems. Like at least back in the day, like 16-bit systems or 32-bit or whatever, 64, all these other systems back in the day, you could compare its competition and easily be like, look, the graphics here are more blocky, in general, and they will be obviously more blocky, or it's more obvious. Now people describe graphical issues or visual like issues with games or whatever. It's like this system is just slightly worse because it's like this particular thing is a little bit more pixelated by like 1 pixel. It's like, really, are we really going to get to that point of comparing it to the point where we have to like zoom in just to see how pixelated something is compared to the other system? It's just like, when you get to that point, just admit it. The systems are on par. Stop fighting about it. Seriously. If you're going to fight about anything, it would be the games themselves or some kind of feature that one system has that the other doesn't. It's no longer about which one has more powerful graphics or which one's the better, more powerful system. At this point, it's like, who cares? I don't know. I'm just really, like, I just gotten fired up by this, because it's just so frustrating. I don't want this to be too long, so I'm going to try and cut it short, probably end it here. But, like, yeah, it's just, man. Go, deciding when I decided to do this was, like, the worst decision I ever made. Like, I decided too late to get a PlayStation, and now that I have a PS4, I really don't even have that many anime games on there or anime style games because of this reason. I have a lot of third party games I could have got on Xbox on my PlayStation. I have a few anime style games, but not as much as I thought I would because I'm just so annoyed by the fact that it could be censored and I might not even know. So it's just frustrating. But anyways, let me know. Tell me what you think in the comments. If you have your own personal PlayStation story or Xbox story or Nintendo story that made you like hate that system or really disappointed in them, so you had to try and figure out another way to get what you want. Just hit me up in the comments and let me know. Um, Subscribe if this is interesting. Hit the like button if this is interesting, and I'll see you guys next time.